Repeated public humiliation is not an accident when it becomes a pattern. It is calculated positioning. The moment someone chooses to correct you sharply in front of others, mock your opinions, expose private details, or turn your mistakes into entertainment, they are not simply speaking. They are establishing hierarchy. Human beings are wired to measure status in groups. When a person lowers you publicly, they are signaling to everyone else where you stand. The damage is not just emotional, it is neurological. Your body tightens, your breathing shifts, and your mind moves into defense. You may laugh along to keep peace, but internally something records the threat. One isolated incident can be addressed and repaired. But when humiliation repeats, it stops being humor and becomes identity shaping. Over time, you begin censoring yourself before speaking. You shrink your stories. You edit your confidence. This is how dignity erodes quietly. Disrespect in public is different from private disagreement. Private correction preserves honor. Public humiliation strips it. Pay attention to frequency, pay attention to audience, and most importantly, pay attention to how you feel afterward. If you consistently leave interactions feeling smaller, embarrassed, or exposed, the pattern is speaking clearly. Forgiving repeated public humiliation without change teaches the other person that access to you comes without accountability. Family dynamics often protect this behavior under the label of tradition or personality. Someone may say they are just joking or that you are too sensitive. That response is another layer of dismissal. Healthy teasing does not wound. Healthy relationships adjust when informed that something hurts. If the behavior continues after clarity, intention is no longer questionable. At that point, forgiveness without boundaries becomes self-abandonment. Respect requires mutual protection of reputation. A person who values you will guard your name when you are present and when you are absent. They will not use your vulnerabilities as stage material. They will not compete with you for dominance in shared spaces. If someone repeatedly performs your humiliation for an audience, understand what is happening. They are borrowing power from your silence. The correction is calm but firm. Address it directly, reduce access if necessary. Dignity is not arrogance. It is self-respect in action. When you refuse to participate in your own diminishment, you reset the standard for how you are treated. Dismissal of your boundaries rarely begins with open defiance. It often starts with a smile, a joke, or a subtle push past what you clearly expressed. You say you are not comfortable discussing a certain topic, and minutes later it is brought up again in a lighter tone, as if repetition will weaken your resolve. You ask for space, and instead you receive a flood of messages demanding explanation. You decline an invitation, and the pressure intensifies with guilt framed as love. This is not misunderstanding. This is testing. Every time someone ignores a stated limit, they are measuring how firmly you will defend it. Boundaries are not dramatic declarations. They are behavioral instructions. They communicate where your responsibility ends and someone else's begins. When those instructions are repeatedly dismissed, the message sent is simple. Your comfort is negotiable. Over time, this conditions you to over-explain, to apologize for saying no, and to accept discomfort to avoid conflict. That internal shift is the real damage. You start managing other people's emotions at the expense of your own stability. Healthy relationships may not always agree with your limits, but they adjust to them. Disrespectful ones challenge them, negotiate them, or pretend not to hear them. The pattern reveals priority. Forgiving constant boundary violations without consequence teaches others that persistence overrides your clarity. Especially within family structures, obedience is sometimes confused with respect, but compliance under pressure is not harmony. It is surrender. When someone repeatedly steps over your limits after you have calmly communicated them, they are choosing control over connection. That choice has impact. It creates resentment beneath the surface and distance in the long term. Boundaries are not punishments. They are filters. They determine who can remain close and under what conditions. If a person refuses to operate within reasonable limits, the solution is not louder explanation. It is firmer enforcement. That may mean shortening conversations, declining visits, or disengaging when a line is crossed. Consistency matters. When enforcement is predictable, behavior adjusts or access reduces. Respect grows where clarity is maintained. You do not need anger to defend your space. You need steadiness. The goal is not to win arguments, but to protect stability. When you stop negotiating your own limits, you teach people how to treat you. And those unwilling to learn reveal their position clearly. Gaslighting and reality manipulation do not begin with dramatic lies. They begin with small denials. You recall a conversation clearly, and the other person responds with calm certainty, saying it never happened that way. You mention a hurtful comment, and they insist you imagine the tone. Over time, these subtle contradictions accumulate. The goal is not simply to win an argument. The goal is to destabilize your confidence in your own perception. When someone repeatedly reframes events to remove their responsibility and place confusion on you, they are shifting power. Confusion weakens decision-making. Doubt reduces resistance. You begin replaying conversations in your mind, wondering if you misunderstood, even when your memory is consistent. This internal questioning becomes exhausting. It creates mental fog. In close relationships, especially within families, this tactic can hide behind phrases like, "You are too sensitive," or "That is not what was meant." But intention does not erase impact, and denial does not rewrite fact. Healthy disagreement allows two perspectives to exist. Manipulation insists that only one version is valid. When your lived experience is repeatedly dismissed, you slowly disconnect from your own intuition. That is the real cost. Forgiving ongoing reality manipulation without firm response invites deeper distortion. Each time you accept a rewritten version of events to keep peace, you reinforce the dynamic. The manipulator learns that persistence will eventually override truth. The solution is not aggressive confrontation, but steady documentation and calm clarity. When something happens, state it simply. If it is denied, repeat your observation without escalation. You are not required to debate your own experience. In severe cases, reducing emotional disclosure becomes necessary because vulnerability provides material for distortion. Trust requires shared accountability. When one person consistently avoids responsibility by bending facts, trust erodes completely. This is not about memory differences, it is about patterns of evasion. A single misunderstanding can be repaired through open dialogue. A pattern of denial signals strategy. Protecting your perception is essential for psychological stability. You are allowed to trust what you saw, what you heard, and what you felt. Respect honors your reality even in disagreement. When that respect is repeatedly absent, forgiveness without change becomes self-betrayal. Clarity must replace confusion, and distance may be required where truth is repeatedly challenged. Weaponizing your weaknesses is one of the clearest signals that a relationship is unsafe. It usually begins in a moment of trust. You share a fear, a past mistake, a failure that still carries weight. In that moment, you are not just speaking. You are handing someone access to a sensitive part of your identity. In healthy relationships, that access is guarded carefully. In unhealthy ones, it is stored for future use. The shift happens during conflict. An argument starts about something small, and suddenly your old insecurity is introduced as evidence against you. A past struggle is thrown into the present to weaken your position. The message beneath the words is simple: your vulnerability is leverage. That realization changes how you communicate. You begin filtering what you share. You speak less openly. You protect details that once would have been offered freely. Over time, emotional intimacy declines because safety has been compromised. This form of disrespect is not loud, but it is precise. It targets the exact areas you once exposed in confidence. Everyone has fragile chapters in their story. Respect means protecting those chapters, even during disagreement. When someone repeatedly turns your honesty into ammunition, they are prioritizing dominance over connection. Forgiving this pattern without firm boundaries teaches the other person that emotional betrayal carries no consequence. Apologies may follow heated moments, but if the behavior repeats, the apology is strategy, not transformation. Trust cannot survive where vulnerability is punished. The correction begins with recognition. Notice the pattern without minimizing it. Then respond with clarity. State directly that personal disclosures are not to be used in conflict. If it happens again, reduce access. This does not require drama. It requires consistency. Emotional safety is built through repeated evidence of protection. When that protection is absent, distance becomes necessary for stability. Especially within families, there may be pressure to overlook these incidents in the name of unity. But unity built on fear of exposure is not healthy connection. It is control. You are allowed to expect confidentiality. You are allowed to expect restraint during arguments. Disagreement should focus on present issues, not archived vulnerabilities. When someone refuses to separate the two, they reveal their priorities. Guarding your weaknesses is not secrecy, it is self-respect. And self-respect requires consequences when trust is repeatedly broken. Conditional love and emotional blackmail rarely announce themselves openly. They disguise control as care. It begins with statements that sound supportive on the surface, but carry hidden requirements underneath. You hear phrases like, "After everything we have done for you, this is how you respond." Or if you truly cared about this family, you would agree. The structure is always the same. Affection, approval, or belonging is tied to obedience. Instead of being accepted for who you are rewarded for compliance and punished for independence. Over time, this creates quiet anxiety. Decisions are no longer based on values or logic, but on fear of withdrawal. You start asking yourself not what is right, but what will keep the peace. That internal shift is significant. It moves you from self-directed living to reaction-based behavior. Love, in its healthy form, allows disagreement without threatening connection. Emotional blackmail removes that safety. It implies that loyalty must be proven through sacrifice. The cost is gradual self-abandonment. You silence preferences, delay goals, and tolerate discomfort to avoid rejection. When affection becomes currency, authenticity disappears. Forgiving conditional love without demanding change reinforces the transaction. Each time you give in to pressure framed as obligation, the pattern strengthens. The person applying it learns that guilt is effective. This does not require shouting or aggression. It thrives in subtle reminders of debt and duty. The correction begins with recognizing that gratitude does not equal surrender. Appreciation for past support does not require lifelong compliance. Healthy relationships celebrate autonomy. They do not fear it. When you calmly refuse to make decisions based on guilt, you may initially face resistance. That resistance reveals how dependent the dynamic was on control. Stay steady. Explain your position without apology. If affection is withdrawn in response, understand what that means. Real love does not disappear because you chose differently. It may feel uncomfortable to challenge emotional blackmail, especially within family systems where obligation is emphasized. But respect cannot exist where belonging is conditional. You are allowed to choose without threat. You are allowed to disagree without exile. Protecting that freedom is not rebellion. It is psychological maturity. Chronic broken promises do not damage a relationship in one dramatic moment. They erode it slowly through repetition. Anyone can fail once. Circumstances change, mistakes happen, and sincere apologies can repair isolated incidents. The problem begins when commitment becomes a pattern of convenience. Someone assures you they will show up, change a behavior, support a plan, or respect a request, and for a short time they follow through. Then the old behavior returns. Excuses replace action, delays replace delivery. You start adjusting your expectations before they disappoint you again. That adjustment is significant. It means trust is weakening. When words and actions repeatedly separate, the nervous system learns not to rely on verbal commitment. You prepare backup plans. You lower emotional investment. You stop fully believing what you hear. This is not dramatic conflict, but it is steady destabilization. Respect is communicated through consistency. It is demonstrated when someone honors their word, even when it is inconvenient. Chronic inconsistency signals that your time, energy, and emotional stability are secondary to their comfort. Over time, this dynamic forces you into a protective stance instead of a cooperative one. Forgiving repeated broken promises without accountability teaches the other person that intention is enough, even without follow-through. They may express regret convincingly. They may describe future improvement in detail, but if behavior does not shift, the pattern remains intact. The key difference between effort and performance is measurable change. When someone truly values repair, you see adjustments in scheduling, communication, and priority. When they do not, you hear refined explanations. Especially within families, there can be pressure to accept inconsistency as personality. That normalization keeps the cycle alive. The correction requires clarity, reduce dependence on unreliable commitments. If promises are made, require specifics and timelines. Observe behavior instead of reacting to emotion. This is not about punishment, it is about alignment between words and reality. Trust rebuilds when predictability returns. If predictability never returns, distance may be necessary to preserve stability. Reliability is a form of respect. Without it, connection becomes uncertain. And uncertainty, repeated long enough, transforms closeness into caution. Undermining your growth is a subtle form of disrespect because it often hides behind concern or humor. You decide to improve your habits, pursue a new goal, change your mindset, or distance yourself from behaviors that no longer serve you. Instead of encouragement, you receive comments that sound small but land heavily. Statements like "you will quit like last time," "do not get ahead of yourself," or "you have changed too much" are not neutral observations. They are attempts to anchor you to an older version of yourself. Growth shifts dynamics. When you evolve, the roles people are used to may no longer fit. Some individuals feel threatened when you expand beyond the identity they are comfortable with. Rather than adjusting to your progress, they try to pull you back into familiarity. Over time, repeated doubt can create hesitation. You may second-guess your ambition or delay decisions to avoid criticism. This hesitation benefits those who prefer you unchanged. Respect does not require full understanding of your goals, but it does require space for you to pursue them. When someone consistently responds to your progress with sarcasm, dismissal, or subtle sabotage, they are prioritizing their comfort over your development. Forgiving constant undermining without response signals that discouragement will be tolerated. Each time you laugh off a belittling remark or explain your plans again to someone who has no intention of supporting them, you reinforce the pattern. The correction begins with recognizing the difference between constructive feedback and quiet sabotage. Constructive feedback focuses on strategy and improvement. Sabotage focuses on doubt and identity. When you identify the pattern, limit how much access that person has to your evolving plans. Not every goal needs full disclosure. Progress does not require universal approval. Maintain steady action without seeking validation from those invested in your stagnation. Especially within families, expectations about who you have always been can feel rigid. Challenging those expectations may create tension. That tension is not proof that you are wrong. It is proof that change disrupts comfort. Stay consistent. Let results speak over time. People who truly respect you will adjust to your growth, even if it surprises them. Those who refuse reveal their attachment to your smaller version. Your responsibility is not to remain predictable. It is to remain committed to development. The silent treatment used as control is often misunderstood because silence itself is not harmful. Healthy silence creates space for reflection, emotional regulation, and thoughtful response. Control-based silence is different. It appears after disagreement, tension, or unmet expectations. Instead of direct communication, one person withdraws completely. Messages go unanswered. Eye contact disappears. Presence becomes cold and distant without explanation. The intention is not peace. The intention is pressure. Silence becomes a tool to create anxiety. You begin replaying the situation in your mind, searching for the exact mistake that triggered the withdrawal. You may apologize just to restore normal interaction, even if you are unsure what you are apologizing for. This shifts power. The person withholding communication controls when connection resumes. Over time, you become hyper-aware of their moods. You adjust your behavior to avoid triggering another shutdown. That adjustment is not harmony. It is conditioning. Respect communicates discomfort clearly. It states the issue, sets limits, and allows dialogue. Manipulative silence avoids clarity because confusion strengthens leverage. The absence of words becomes louder than direct criticism. Forgiving repeated silent treatment without consequence reinforces